Let's get back to Johanna from Citi. You came ready to talk about Korea a little bit today, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
because we got a big election. And, you know, I was running through some of the demographics in Korea. It's one of the most awful countries in terms of gender inequality. Did you know that? The OECD says they're 108th out of 135. Behind Burkina Faso, UAE, Cambodia, only half of the females over 15 are in the workforce, and they're not paid anywhere close to what their male counterparts are.
Right.
A female president might go some ways toward fixing that.
No, I think that would be a very strong symbolic move. But obviously, it goes beyond just the gender of the president, right? It also comes to the policies.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of the press, you know, media being media and often shallow, concentrated more on Park Geun-hye's legacy as the daughter of the dictator, and then what the alternative was. But in terms of like reforming the chaebol influence, in terms of closing the Gini coefficient and cutting the wealth gap, and the fact that South Koreans are some of, depending on which poll, some of the unhappiest people in the world.
Right.
Fixing those things, now the lines get a lot more blurred.
No, absolutely. And in fact, both candidates have the same kind of similar platform. And trying to distinguish between policies is quite tough. But I think we're going through this phase where a lot of countries, like Korea, which has been very economically successful and industrialized, you know, through export-led growth, is starting to rethink its growth strategy, given what's happening in the advanced economies, and need to start rebalancing and redistributing. We've already seen this in a lot of countries. I mean, look at China. We keep talking about rebalancing. Look at Singapore. We're also talking about rebalancing. I think similarly, Korea also faces this sort of challenge and trying to figure out the national identity of its economic policy, whether we need to reshift a little bit about redistribution. I think that's very normal.
You know, anytime you talk about redistribution or kind of, you know, reducing the oligopolistic sort of structure or tendencies in an economy like South Korea, I mean, you look at what's listed in South Korea, and it's the chaebol, and it's the chaebolettes, and, you know, the little chaebols and the sub-chaebols and the units of the chaebol and all that. What you're talking about sounds like a net negative, at least in the, you know, for a year or two, as we get that restructuring done.
Right. Well, it's a delicate balancing act, right? Because chaebols and all these large conglomerates have been the big driver of Korea's growth. In fact, in some of the surveys of corporations in Korea, they say 70% of facilities investment in Korea is actually done by the conglomerates. So if you try to, say, clamp down on them or reduce their incentive to invest, that could slow down growth. But I think Korea has room in terms of policy space, for example, on the fiscal side. They've been pretty fiscally conservative, so there's room to do some of the redistribution via fiscal policy. And so we'll see what happens, you know, when the new president comes in, whether they'll pursue those policies.
You know, as far as the companies that people have exposure to, they've done a pretty good job of beating up on the Japanese in terms of getting a competitive edge, right?
Yes,
at least in high tech and IT. And this morning there was some news flow that Samsung and Apple, we might be, you know, maybe getting to mid-ground among some peace instead of suing each other, you know, in all these jurisdictions all around the world, because that can be good for nothing except lining the lawyers' pockets. What's your view on the market? What's your view on the currency? I mean, in terms of, you know, how investable?
No, look, I think Korea has made tremendous market share gains in various segments, including electronics, including autos. Some of that has really been helped partially by productivity improvements in Korea. Some of it, I mean, to be fair, the Korean won on a real effective exchange rate basis has actually, you know, to a certain extent depreciated and arguably, could be arguably undervalued. So I think we do, if you look at our forecast for next year, dollar won is where we're expecting won to appreciate, you know, we're expecting maybe up to 10.50, below 10.50 by the end of next year. Because I think the pressure of current account and export flows and financial flows driving stronger won will grow.
All right.
And if they want to redistribute income, you know, hopefully that will incorporate some further tolerance of currency.
Joanna, happy holidays, okay?
Thank you very much.
Back to Philippines and family, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
What do they say there? Feliz Navidad?
Maligayang Pasko.
Oh, that's not Feliz Navidad?
That's Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can sing the song.
That's right. All right. Thanks for a good year.